Brooklyn Nets. Here we go, Steph. Let's do it. 45.5 the win total, 35-37 last season, 7th in the conference, 22nd offensive rating, 10th defensive rating, 8th in pace. Much like the Hawks, not comparing these two teams, but a lot of those numbers we can really throw out because we haven't seen Kevin Durant yet. Well, we're seeing him, but we haven't seen him yet with the season underway in a couple days. But KD, Kyrie, how do you think these two are going to mesh? What's the expectations for Brooklyn? I would imagine they're very high, especially with yourself having high expectations for them.
Yeah, so we might have a little homerism here, but I promise it's not coming. It's not going to be a homer take. This team is absolutely loaded. You talk about expectations. The expectations for this team is a championship, and it has to be. They spent money on Joe Harris. Money well spent, in my opinion. He's the perfect fit for what this team needs as an elite shooter and floor spacer that other defenses can't leave to try and double KD or Kyrie. When we talk about how do KD and Kyrie mesh, I don't see how they don't mesh well. The Nets as a whole on offense are a mismatch for their opponent on every single game. They can match up versus teams that go big, where they have DeAndre Jordan and Jared Allen, who can kind of put 48 minutes against an elite center like Joel Embiid, who's in their conference. They can also go completely positionless and maybe have KD at the 5 and play him with Kyrie, Spencer, Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, Joe Harris, and then Kevin Durant. This team is versatile. They can do anything. They are loaded. They are a team full of bucket getters, and they're also a fairly deep team. That's what people are kind of forgetting. They are top heavy with Kyrie and Kevin Durant, but Karis LeVert took a huge leap last year. That's a legit third piece. They have, again, two legit NBA centers in Jared Allen and DeAndre Jordan. I really like the Bruce Brown pickup. They gave up nothing, and he's an NBA rotational player on a good team. That's his role, and he fits that role well. And Landry Shamet was a nice little pickup. It's another floor spacer that they can sub in with Joe Harris. This team kind of has it all. Will they mesh early on? I'm not too concerned about it. All that matters is if they're gelling towards the end of the season come playoff time. I think this is the best team in the East, and we'll get to that a little later. But I absolutely love this team. They're loaded. I like what they did with Steve Nash. They have a bit of a therapist as their coach, where coaching on this team is less important than I would say other teams. I'll make the comparison to Joe Torre when he was on the Yankees, right? He was more of a therapist than a head coach. They kind of brought that in. They brought that in with Steve Nash, who everyone respects. He'll manage the personalities. It seems like everything is clicking with this team. And the last point I'll make as I finish this Nets rant is Kevin Durant has looked good in the preseason. That's really, really important. When they brought him in, everyone was worried, okay, he has a torn Achilles. That's a serious, serious injury. The suspended season was maybe the best thing for him. He is not coming back after 12 months. He's coming back from 18 months. And that 6-month difference is massive for that recovery period. And he looked really good in his first preseason game. If the Nets have 90% Kevin Durant, not the 70, 75, 80% that other, maybe people thought they might get out of him, that is a game changer. He is arguably the best player in the NBA, at least the top 3 player in the NBA. If Kevin Durant's back, it's hard not to like this team coming out of the East in my eyes.
Look at the smile on his face. He is pumped. It's like Christmas morning for Steph. I love it. Zach, any counterpoints, any pushback there? KD, do you expect any limitations? And with Nash there, do you feel like maybe they may need a few games under their belt to get going, and maybe we shy away from that win total at 45.5 because it needs to be basically a perfect season for them?
Yeah, if they get off to a sluggish start, I won't be too worried. We've seen, quote unquote, super teams, right, struggle out of the gate. That happens whether you've got 3 all-stars on a team or 2 all-stars on a team or no all-stars on a team. When you bring a bunch of new guys together, sometimes it takes a while to gel. But how am I supposed to give a better Nets take than that? This is Mr. Brooklyn Nets here. And the only thing I would add is that, I think the bubble playoffs where they got handled by the Raptors, but those guys went out and competed. And the players that were getting the big time playoff minutes last year are guys that are going to be those rotational pieces. Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, maybe a little bit more than a rotational piece, but certainly a third option on their best 5, right? We talked about Joe Harris, Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot, who was DFS playoff darling in the first round last year, and Jared Allen's still there. So I just think this team is set up to make a run to the finals. I don't personally have them coming out of the East, but they're right there neck and neck with my pick, who we'll get into in a little bit. And I'm excited to see my man Steph take the Brooklyn Nets ride this year. I know the feeling when your team, gets when LaMarcus Aldridge came to San Antonio, I was pumped up. I hope it works out better for you guys than it did for us after that signing.
Yeah, well said. No, it is exciting, honestly, Steph. I'm just teasing, man. But I look at this squad too. We've already touched on it, but forget Kyrie and KD for a second. I know they're two superstars, but LeVert and Harris and Allen are great in their own mind as well. So I'm seeing KD 10-1 to win the MVP. I'm seeing the Nets here, the fourth best odds, 6-1 to win the championship. You got some juice on either of those, Steph?
So I like the KD number a lot. I was actually plugging that KD number on the FTN NBA podcast when it was 20-1 a couple of weeks ago. That number jumped 10-1 after we saw Kevin Durant in the preseason, and he looked really good. And it's if you were getting, again, 90% Kevin Durant, you're not going to get those odds for much longer. It's tough to see how that's not good value. I would stay away from the win total at 45.5. I think that is a fair line. Like Zach said, we've seen kind of teams start off slow, especially good teams that are kind of have a lot of pieces they want to develop together. The Nets don't really care if they're the 1 seed, the 2 seed, or the 3 seed, or even like the 4 seed. Let's say they just need to get in the playoffs. And as long as they're playing well towards the end of the season, that's all that matters. I think that could have an impact on that total. I would just stay away from that. And at 6-1 to win the championship, I would make that bet. I have made that bet. So I'm a fan of it.